Hi class, so in this video we'll be drawing the ray diagram for the microscope. So if you haven't already drawn the ray diagram in your PTRS books, you can follow along this video and draw it inside your book or even on a piece of paper as practice. So the very first thing that we have to do is we have to draw the principal axis, which is the straight line on the middle, so that we can have a point of symmetry to draw our two lenses. So then let's draw the objective lens first, as it is the first lens that the rays will pass through. So we know that the objective lens is a smaller lens and has a shorter focal length, which means that it is thicker. Okay, so what you do is just draw a thicker lens and then mark the focal point. So you don't have to make it too far, as it has a short focal length, so maybe about this distance, and then you can label it as the focal length of the objective lens, FO. And after that, we can mark the middle point of the lens and we'll label it as the objective lens, L1. You can erase this part to keep the line within the lens. So this will be our first lens, and now let's draw the object. So we'll just use an arrow, and one thing to note is that you should not put the object too far away from the focal length, because if you remember back in when we learned about image formation, if the object is more than 2f away from the lens, the image size starts to become diminished. So once you have your object, we can start to draw the rays coming out of it. So let's represent the first ray, which is parallel to the principal axis with the red color. So the ray, of course, travels outwards of the object, and once it hits the middle of the lens, it bends towards the focal point. So just draw a full line, as these are real rays. And after that, you'll use blue color to represent the second ray, which is the ray which travels straight through the middle of the lens and does not refract. So we'll draw and extend this line until the two rays meet. Surround. So we can see that the rays converge here, and since the image is upside down or inverted, we know that this image is a real image. It's real, inverted, and it's also bigger than the object, so we can say that it's magnified, right? So this is labeled as I1, the first image. So you do not need to write down the characteristics, but this is just as a reference. Okay. So then after that, let's draw the second lens, or the eyepiece. So the eyepiece lens has a longer focal length and is so less powerful, so it's not as thick compared to the objective lens, but we have to make it much larger so that it's able to capture the rays, or the imaginary rays that we're going to draw. So you can draw like this. And then this will be our eyepiece lens. And of course, we can add in the straight line going down the middle to act as the point where the rays start to bend. Okay. one thing to note is that now, as we draw the focal point of the eyepiece, it has to be longer than the focal length of the objective lens. So if, as you can see here, this is about 3 boxes. So here it has to be longer than that. So maybe we can use about 4. Yeah. And another thing to note, of course, is that the image, the first image, has to be within the focal length. So let me extend the principal axis a bit more. Right, so now this first image will become our, we can act as though it is an object for the eyepiece lens. Okay. So let me try to use a different color. So we'll use yellow and green this time for the second set of rays. So of course again we'll use, but this time, since the rays are going to be imaginary, this is not the actual light that's coming out of from the image. We'll use dotted lines to represent these rays instead, because they're not real, unlike the light from the objective lens. So we use dashed lines until we hit the middle of the lens, and then they bend towards the focal point. And once we do that, what we have to do is we have to find a converging point, right? But since we know that if an object is lesser than the focal point, we have to find a virtual image on the same side as the object. So what we gotta do is we gotta extend the green colored dotted lines all the way to the back, so that we'll find a point where it meets with the second set of imaginary rays. So then this is we'll represent the second set of rays using yellow color. So once again, we extend it backwards until they meet with each other. Okay. So what we got is an image forming here, right? And this image is a virtual image because they are not formed on the right side of the lens. And for some of you, you may get a much bigger image. Some of you may get an image which forms this side. Maybe you get an image that's really big like this, and that's okay too, as long as the image is virtual, inverted, and enlarged, then it is alright. So let me delete the image. And then now we gotta extend the blue and red colored light rays to show where the light is traveling and hits the observer's eye. So now we extend the real light rays, and you can see that the light rays are actually larger than the lens. So that means the size of this lens is not big enough, and we have to extend it a bit more. So maybe let's extend it by one more block. So yeah. So maybe if you find that yours is not big enough, you can adjust it as well. now what we do is they take our ruler and connect the first light ray to the image form, and we use a dotted line to show the angle, and after that we switch to using a full ray to show that this is where the real light is traveling. So once again we do the same with the second light ray. Let me make it a bit more prettier. So now we have these two light rays traveling into an observer's eye. So you can draw a small eye here and label this as the observer. And this is the final image that it is being seen. And this image, and as for the characteristics of the image, right, we have to compare it to the original object, this one here, to the left hand side. So one thing you'll notice that it's not on the same side. One is upright and the other is inverted. So the image is inverted, and another thing is that it is virtual. The final image is virtual, as it is on the left side of the eyepiece lens. So it is virtual, inverted, and lastly, of course, magnified, because it is much bigger than the original object. So with that's how we can draw the image. So once you have drawn the ray diagram in your own books, you can take a picture and upload it into the Padlet link in the group chat. Okay, so once you have watched this video, you can move on to the video on telescope. So thank you.